if I don't cry for ICE, no matter what I think about them, as much as I cry for the immigrant, then I'm wrong. I don't have the heart of Jesus.
So if we claim that our goal is God's righteousness, that we want as followers of Jesus to see his righteousness done on this earth, my anger is not the way. We're living in really tense times here in Minnesota and Minneapolis. We just kind of seem to go from one political controversy to the next. And of course, the latest one is related to the actions of the federal agents, the ICE agents here in Minneapolis. They've been sent here to, at least if you take them at their word, they've been sent here to deal with those who are here illegally, and particularly focusing on violent criminals coming here to extract them and to deport them back to their countries of origin. Now, what made this whole situation from already very tense and just inflamed the whole thing was the killing of this woman. I'm forgetting her name, which is ridiculous. Good. Her last name is Good.
Renee is
sorry.
Name that I could be wrong.
What, of course, inflamed this entire situation to another level was the killing of Renee Good. I'm sure everyone has, if not seen the video, at least heard a description of what took place, where she's in her car. It looks like she's trying to pull away, and then she's tragically shot. Of course, that just took this from very tense to explosively tense. And we're still living in the days since then. And, a lot of people see what they're doing as this gross overreach of power. This kind of federal agents being sent in here in a very militaristic style. Every day you can't avoid the anecdotes of people being rounded up or people, Target employees being grabbed, or you hear stories of, friends. And I think if you're living here, especially, you hear not just the direct anecdotes of people who are being affected by this, but also just the general fear that this is creating. I work with a guy, one of the dads on Macklin's hockey team. He owns like a ice removal, snow removal business, and he has a lot of Hispanic guys working for him. And he says they're all afraid to come to work, and not because they're illegal, but they're just afraid to come to work. And so he's having a really hard time dealing with that. And honestly, stories like that are ubiquitous. I mean, everybody has a story like that. Families who have friends, Latino friends especially, who they're not sending their kids to school. So a lot of these schools are like, missing a ton of kids. It's really, regardless of where you land on this, if you can somehow remove yourself from the humanity of it, I don't know how you do that. Because there are, of course, aspects of this conversation that are societal and political, and immigration's hardly a new conversation. And, you can go watch a bunch of videos and read a bunch of books and watch a bunch of, podcast episodes all about the various opinions on immigration and border control and expedited visa processes and differentiating between legit asylum seekers and non-legit and violent versus non-violent. There are so many contentious aspects to this conversation, and predictably everyone's so polarized. Predictably everyone's the way they interpret all the facts happens to perfectly align with their pre-existing political beliefs. Shocker, right? I've not really seen anyone I know that's more on the right having a left perspective. I've seen nobody I know on the left having a more right perspective. That would just be a miracle of miracles if just once a more right-leaning friend of yours could have a more liberal perspective on something, and vice versa. But of course that never happens. And so here we are. And I don't know about you guys, but it's hard not to feel apathetic. It's hard not to, not towards the people, because I think people can never be apathetic towards people, but just the whole situation feels so messy, so tribal, so polar. And I just wonder, what do we do? How does a follower of Jesus feel about a situation like this, respond to a situation like this? Because I feel at a loss often, and I'm living right in the middle of it. So I don't know. Luke, you seem eager to go. So how about you, Tom?
I was just going to ask Ben, could you give a bit more context for because I'm sure it's on the news all the time everywhere globally. But I think it's more intense, obviously, there where you are,
right?
Obviously, especially in Minneapolis. But for a more global audience, what is the situation like now? Are there protests happening on the streets everywhere in Minneapolis?
Right.
What's the just give a bit more context for like people that aren't right in the center of this happening.
Again, I'm not an expert. I haven't, full disclosure, I have not joined any protests. I have not actively put myself in the epicenter of any of these things. I think like most of these kinds of situations, the media often portrays things as more intense and dramatic than the reality on the ground. There are certainly protests happening. There are certainly certain hot spots in areas where there is more unrest, but you know how it is. I mean, you don't feel it. You can be 5 blocks away from it and not feel it. That's kind of how these things tend to go. So I would say from a average person's perspective, it's more attention felt than a reality seen and experienced. Now, again, I can't speak for a lot of people who are definitely engaging more directly.
With the you were describing the Latino community and the fear there. How has it been with ICE in the US? Like, is it a particular focus on does it feel like a particular focus on the Latino community? Or, because I know that in Minneapolis, you guys have a lot of people from
Somalia.
Somalia, that's right. There's a massive Somalian community there. So is it like all different communities? What's going on?
Again, I don't proclaim to be an expert on this subject. I think the most generic way to explain it is that there is an attempt to rectify what the current administration sees as a mass breach of the border. That, our country has been inundated with illegal immigrants of all nationalities, of all kinds, and that this is an attempt to rectify that situation. This is an attempt to go in to the places where they've gone, and the charitable right way to look at this is that it's a targeted, deliberate, largely criminal focused extraction of illegal immigrants. That's what they would say. The left would say it's indiscriminate, it's arbitrary, it's abusive. That's kind of the polarities. On one hand, you have, no, they're only going after rapists and murderers. On the other hand, you have, no, they're going after kindergarten teachers baking cookies and singing hymns. Those are the cartoonized polarities. Again, in this world where things are so tribal and so polar and you can't even trust the things you see on your phone, it's like the truth is hard to know. But like logically, it's very likely something in the middle. I think there are certainly abuses of power taking place, and the way this is being dealt with, this sort of militaristic, top-down, what feels like a very aggressive approach, I think we got to dig into the thoughts on that as a follower of Jesus. But yeah, it's really messy. That I know for sure. And there is widespread fear and a hostility not seen since the days of George Floyd. Really, I don't think.
I mean, Jody and I, when we're here, we live right in the city, so we have an apartment right in Minneapolis. We're about 4 minutes from where the shooting happened. Oh, wow. And so, but what you see is like in a lot of shops, they have signs on the door that say, this is a private space. ICE cannot come in here, that kind of thing. So they put this like in all the restaurants.
Everyone's welcome but ICE. I've seen those.
Yeah, basically.
Well, yeah. And so you see that in like all the shops and restaurants in our neighborhood. And, I know people who are like Ben described, well, like my brother-in-law, he owns a bunch of car washes, and a lot of people there aren't coming to work. And many of them are not coming to work who are legal. They have visas or they're citizens, but they're just afraid to come to work because of that they'll get picked up. And so it is a mess. It's really a very messed up situation right now. And there's a lot of anxiety, especially for people who are profiled, as kind of fitting the description of someone who is here illegally. Those people, they need to make sure, that they're carrying their documents with them.
Yeah. Even our own people in Steiger, we do a lot of work in the Latin American world. And because of that, there's a lot of, a lot of us there and them here. We have a lot of people around the world who are kind of interdispersed for a variety of reasons. And yeah, our own people have been told, bring your passport. You know, like make sure that you have
Yeah,
that.
there
Because
are-
obviously, if you have your passport and you're documented, they'll not do anything then, right? They pick you up. Let's say you're Latino, but you're legal. Then
There's
then
that.
you're
That's
fine,
where this
or
gets so
not.
tricky, Luke. That no one really seems to know the parameters, and there have been multiple reports of people getting picked up that then later on prove their citizenship and are released, but after a very dramatic and traumatic, like public pickup kind of thing. And just for, from my side of things, my father-in-law is still a pastor to a small Hispanic church outside of Birmingham. He's 80. I think in a couple of weeks he turns 85. Still, he and his wife pastoring this church. And so they have, they've had some people that have been picked up. They have people, their church services are smaller. Same kind of thing. There's just a lot of fear, it seems, in minority groups because it just doesn't, at least from my understanding, there doesn't seem to be much rhyme or reason as to who exactly is a suspect in this. So it just feels like it's a lawless gang of very heavily armed individuals who are deciding for themselves whether someone looks like they might be here illegally.
And again, I want to believe that that's not true, right? And I also believe that you have to be absolutely naive if you don't think that both sides are dramatizing and exaggerating and exasperating the polarities of this for political purposes. I mean, that is just absolutely what's happening. And so I don't know the truth, but I know enough to know to mistrust or distrust what I see and what I hear. And so it feels to me, again, this is my uninformed,
probably on both sides. Would that be fair to
100%.
say that it's hard
100%.
to trust on either side?
100%. And one of the things one of my good friends said is, he said that if your perspective on this so happens to perfectly align with your pre-existing political beliefs, and you don't question that on any level ever, that should give you pause, right? Kind of like what I said at the beginning of this conversation. If just once one of my left-leaning friends, and I have left-leaning friends, if my left-leaning friends, I mean, it's more than some people could say, my left-leaning friends would have a more right-leaning perspective, or my right-leaning friends, and I got plenty of those, would have more of a left-leaning perspective, there would be some hope for the world. But what's so frustrating is that we live in a time now where anything can be dismissed as fake news. Everything can be and both sides do it. Man, even you can say that that's a right word, kind of a right-leaning word that Trump kind of coined, but both sides do it. Both sides dismiss whatever data doesn't conveniently fit within their narrative. They both do it. And they both create these hyper cartoonized versions of what's going on to support their perspective. And I will say, and then I would like to get into some of the maybe Jesus following principles in terms of how to unravel this and how to navigate it, though I do think it's good to process. It does feel like there are so many stories that it feels hard to deny that at the very least, the approach is highly aggressive. And it does feel like what needs to be cautious and surgical feels like carpet bombing. That's what it does feel like.
I mean, there's no question about whether that's happening. It's not, fake news. I mean, I personally know people, and so do you, Ben, who have stories about that, where they're legit people who are here legally are afraid to leave the house. So that's not something I've read on social media. I know people in that situation. So that is happening.
Yeah. So then what do we do?
Well, and then on top of, should we also, while we're talking about all this and before we kind of get into the Jesus perspective, should we mention the Iran situation? Because that I know it's not the same, but it also is. And for me anyway, that is one of my problems is it feels so overwhelming, because it's like on one hand there's all the ICE stuff and all that stuff going on here, and then there's also stuff going on across the world that's terrible, and riots and all that. It's just such a I don't know, there's a couple of Bible verses that come to mind, but maybe I think I'll save them for later. But anyway, it's such a heavy time right now.
I know I initially mentioned that as part of this conversation. I do think that this would probably make more sense as the main focus. Obviously the Iran thing, and you got Venezuela. I mean, that's a little bit of the challenge.
Ukraine is still
Ukraine.
Of course, you always have things, and that I don't say that in any way to dismiss it or make it a callous thing at all. But well, you want some interesting views on this whole topic. YouTube the Polish leader. Is he the prime minister? I think. I mean, that dude.
Wow. I don't know anything about him. Tell us in one
president.
Succinct statement.
Oh, look up the president of Poland, man. That guy's like, he was on this famous interview where he was asked, why he had such a hardline view on having Muslim immigration, and he's just basically like, we won't be letting one in, not one. And you want to know why Poland is safe, why Poland prospers? Because we're not going to let one in, because that's my job. I mean, you watch this. I'm not commenting on my views on that, but man, this guy has no qualms or no confusion about what he sees as his purpose as the leader of Poland and what his role as the leader of Poland is. So that's a separate thing. You can YouTube that, make judgments all you want.
I mean,
but what
interestingly,
I want to talk about,
interestingly, the prime minister, because Poland has a president and a prime minister, and the prime minister is more left-leaning. So it's very interesting.
Oh,
I think it's more like the UK politics, where you get these two sides, like kind of with power, but debating stuff. Or maybe it's even more so than in the UK. I don't know. But it's interesting.
But okay, so I think as I was reflecting on this, I think one of the first things that I felt a sense of conviction over is just my heart in all of this, because I don't think as followers of Jesus, I just don't think we have an option to not care. I know that sounds like almost rhetorical. It's so obvious, but it's like, I don't care what side of this you're on. I don't care what your views of immigration are. People are being affected by this. Innocent people are being affected by this. There is widespread fear. And I'm sorry, but me sitting in my suburban house, I mean, I'm actually pretty close to all of this, to be honest. I don't really live that far out in the suburbs. But for those of us living out in our suburbs, 100 miles, well, not 100, but miles away from where this is.
Waconia.
Yeah, whatever. Where most of this is happening, I don't think we can afford to sit back. If we care about honoring Jesus, I think the first place to start with this is to say, God, really break my heart for the people involved, right? I mean, isn't that the most obvious place where this needs to start?
I mean, for me, I'd even back it up one step, previous to that, which is, God, forgive my heart, because my knee-jerk reaction and I realize how much and how since I was in high school, I have had such a struggle with authority in my life that as soon as I see or feel this kind of like authority structure that seems to be so heavy-handed and so brutal, my knee-jerk reaction is to curse. And so it's like in this time, I just feel like this temptation to curse all the time. And I want to start wearing the shirts that don't say nice things about ICE. But I also know, as a follower of Jesus, that nothing about that posture will actually change anyone, especially me or especially them. So I think for me anyway, I've had to start by just saying, God, I confess that the first thing I feel is hatred, anger, and rage against authority structures that seem so contrary to your kingdom. Please help me to have your heart in seeing all of this the way you would. And that, so then it's anyway, that's enough for now. Well, David, I think I interrupted. You were about to say something cool.
No, I was just saying, one of the things that's very clear in the Bible is that God is love. So love does not exist where there is no God, because God is the source of love. And Jesus was was the expression of God on the earth in human form. And Jesus was compassionate to the unlovable, the tax collectors and the notorious people, the sinners. So whatever side you're on, you would define the unlovable as the ones that are on the left, or if you're on the right.
Yeah.
And if you're on the right, on the left, you hate the people on the left. I know people who only like people who drive old cars. So if you have a nice car, if you drive an expensive car, they disdain you, they hate you. They only
Steve
like
Bradley.
people, huh?
Oh, you're talking
Steve
about
Bradley,
Steve,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they only like people who have old cars.
I know a guy.
And I also know people that only like people who have new cars. So if you're driving, if you have a car like Chad, or you don't have a nice car like Luke, they look down on you and they think you're lame, lazy, people.
Oh, and Hiki.
It's Inhiki.
Yeah.
What is that? It's not even a real name. I know people that love rich people
with nice cars.
And I know it's funny because I had a friend who, the green one, Antonius. He's a famous guy in our mission world. But anyway,
the green one from the woods.
He started a home for destitute people in Delhi. And so he was reaching the poorest of the poor. It was like Mother Teresa kind of work. But then he started to get this disdain for people who weren't destitute. So but then he wanted their money. So he didn't like people that had money. He looked down on them, but he would asking them for money to support what he was doing in India. And I can remember I was with Antonius. He knows he wouldn't mind me talking about this on this podcast. But anyway, so we're talking about that and I'm going, Ton, you got to cry for the rich. If you just cry for if your heart isn't broken for people in the nice houses and it's only for the people who are under the bridges, you're not like Jesus. And so I would say that know my heart isn't wrong. If whether call myself a Republican or I call myself a Democrat, or in the UK you call yourself like one of those guys that live in the mud,
free flying.
No, they like you're a
hobo.
That in England they have a word for those guys.
Hobo.
Just the guys that live in the mud huts, and then you're the sire, the king, or whatever, right?
Surf.
You're an aristocrat, and you'll look down on the peasants. That's kind of the English way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You're not right, because so that has to be the my heart, that needs to inform how I feel. Mm-hmm. If I don't cry for ICE, no matter what I think about him, as much as I cry for the immigrant, then I'm wrong.
Oof.
I don't have the heart of Jesus.
Yeah, that's hard.
And so you can't, to respond to you, Chad, you can automatically know you need to repent. If your attitude is that, it's not a Jesus attitude. What would Jesus do if he came to Minneapolis right now? I think he would really offend a lot of people in terms of who he would be hanging out with on both sides.
Well, that's why he ended up dead. Well,
exactly.
Obviously, other than the divine plan. It's like the Braveheart quote. If you make enemies on both sides, you end up dead. And that's exactly what happened.
Exactly. So it's very easy, actually. It's not difficult at all to know if I have the Jesus heart on this whole situation. It's pretty simple.
That is so dang radical, right? Because, and what's revealing about that, and you articulated that well, is that, 1 minute you're on the side of defending the equivalent of ICE, and on the next minute you're on the side condemning the equivalent of ICE, depending on your political perspective. And, in the whole, trans argument debate, speaking of getting canceled here, it's like the doctors involved are either heroes or monsters. It just depends on what side of the issue that you fall on. But then
but I think you can still say they're monsters. But that doesn't mean...
But that's not... You didn't even let me finish my point.
My
point, similar to the point you made, is that the Jesus heart is still for the same person, regardless of your perspective on them. And that is just massively radical, because we live in a time that doesn't honor that. It doesn't honor
Pick
that.
a side,
yeah,
bro.
exactly. It honors quick reactions, picking a side, inflammatory comments, provocative t-shirts. Like, that's what it honors, because that is the society that we live in. And yet that's antithetical to Jesus. But doesn't that, to some degree, I don't know, what does that mean for you as a person? Because I think that kind of makes you a nomad in a society that demands tribe allegiance.
Well, that's a really good way of putting it, and that makes it biblical. We are nomads, right? Jesus told us we were not of this world, and that we were sojourners. We're just passing through, and that we shouldn't be of this world. So when I hear you guys talking about it, that's what it makes me think of: the fact that following Jesus is countercultural, and it always will be. And yet sometimes we think that when you get into the politics of something, on one side, people say, well, we're countercultural, we're on the left or whatever, we're countercultural. And then the guys on the right will say, no, we're countercultural. Following Jesus does mean stepping back from all of that and asking God for his heart for people. I think that was amazing how you put it, David, crying for an immigrant in the same way you'd cry for, and being able to actually cry for somebody who's in ICE. That's a really strong way of putting it. How do we take a step back and get God's heart for people and for a situation? That's countercultural. And I think that the result of it will be something you were talking about near the beginning, Ben, of that you'd love to hear your right-leaning friends say something more left-leaning or understand the other side, or vice versa. And that's probably what that will look like. When I hear God's heart, I'm going to do things that just don't fit the tribalism, that don't fit those divisions. I mean, it would be the more conservative or Republican person who wants to see the immigration situation in the US or in whatever country here in Europe, because there are various parallels. They want to see the immigration situation sorted out. They have that political view. But when they encounter somebody who's an immigrant and is struggling or in need or having that they would actually help them. They would be Jesus to that person. They would help them out. Or I remember, this is an interesting example just came to my mind. There was a time where in Ireland there's a lot of immigration, and there was a friend of mine from Brazil who was over there, and there were a lot of Brazilians that had gone over there, a lot of Polish different people, and there was a church that he was part of in Ireland, and they were trying to help people who had come in as immigrants. They were trying to serve, they were involving them in the church family, they were trying to support people. But they didn't allow undocumented immigrants to serve in ministry, because they were both saying, don't live a life that is not truthful and not right and not doing the right thing. We're not going to support that, but we also want to care for the community around us. So it was just counterculture in the sense that it didn't fit any of the political sides, but it was having Jesus's heart for people. Yeah. So I think that's a big thing about being a follower of Jesus. In any one of these situations we're looking at, it's like, how can I not fit in with the tribalism, step back and say, God, what's your heart? And how do I in each situation that comes before me show your heart? And I can't do anything about everything, but I can do something about what's happening in front of me right now.
Yeah. And I would say, though, that I think an important thing to mention, and David, you mentioned this as it related to the monster comment, is what this doesn't mean is that you don't take sides and you're indifferent and you're apathetic and you don't act when you see injustice. That's not what we're saying, right? It's you love people and you recognize the shared humanity no matter what. But if you do feel as submitted to Jesus and his desire for your life and the lives of those around you, if you do see injustice and God calls you to step into that, like, you're not going to ever do that perfectly, right? But we're not saying, well, in the name of loving everyone, you just kind of sit on the sidelines. Like, because some people could say that, like, well, that's all well and good for you to say, love the ICE guy. But the ICE guy is the guy that's causing all the fear and the chaos and the trouble. That's great. I can love that guy. But what I need to do is serve the immigrant. So again, I'm not necessarily picking a sides, but you know what I'm saying, that loving both sides should not produce apathy and indifference. Not indifference, but apathy, or inaction, rather, is the word I was looking for.
Well, I mean, the Bible speaks very clearly about faith that has no action. In James 2, 14, what does it profit my brethren if someone says he has faith but has no works? And I think that that's true. I think that works if I just have a theological faith, if it's just a matter of certain doctrines that I memorize and then make me feel secure, but then it has no outworking in terms of how I live. But I think if I'm really a Jesus follower, I have to do something. And I can't, it's not like the monster comment, that, I don't know, did I talk about that on the podcast? I was speaking at a church here, and I
don't think you
talked about how this doctor who cut off the breasts of this young girl was a monster, and how that was, anyway. And so because of that, the church took my sermon down from the internet. And then the whole next Sunday, he talked about, his sermon was basically apologizing for the comment that I made about how this doctor was a monster. Well, I think a doctor who cuts the breasts off a 22-year-old girl is a monster. And I'm not going to, change my opinion on that or back down from that. I think the problem is there in the church is a lot of people don't take stands on evil things that are happening.
Okay, but then doesn't that contradict what you said? I mean,
no,
do
it's
you
talking
cry
about
for
loving
that monster?
Well, but the doctor is a monster. Do I need to have God's heart for him in terms of God loves him and cares
but the
about
use
him?
of that word does not necessarily seem to imply that you have a heart for the guy.
I know, but I think that there is time for strong language for things like that. I think that what you're saying is that we need to, doesn't mean that we don't take stands on things that are really evil or where it's appropriate for us to do that. I mean, I think where I was speaking, it was in Minneapolis, that has a very liberal view on all these kinds of things. But I felt like it was appropriate and right for me to take a stand on that when I was speaking. I think there's times for prophetic things to be said.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I think, not to pick on you in that specific circumstance, but it's a little bit of this conversation. It's relevant to this conversation because some might argue that that's inflammatory language, that there is a way to communicate the truth of that situation in a way that does not just create more division and more chaos and more conflict. And a lot of the social media rhetoric, a lot of the protest rhetoric, a lot of the back and forth is exactly that kind of language. And you would have to infer or you would have to, based on a conversation with you later, realize, but he still does love that person, even if they're egregious in the act that they committed. But you would never get that just by hearing you talk. You would think he hates that guy, and because of the injustice. The same argument can be made of someone who hates the ICE agent because of the injustice that they're committing.
But I don't think that saying that we need to be countercultural and not tribalistic and not just fit in with the political game thing and take a step back means that we don't take action or that we can't be strong in our words and call things out. So I don't know if the goal is to avoid like being strong and sometimes being offensive in a sense to call things out. I don't think that that's what it means to not be involved in a two-sided political game. Because I mean, you can look at examples of how Jesus or John the Baptist dealt with people around them.
You brood of vipers.
And there were certain groups and people that they called out like that in a strong way. Now, Jesus didn't fit in to the political game of that time. He didn't take a side. He wasn't like, I'm with the tax collectors and the Romans, I think that it's okay. Romans are okay. He wasn't taking that political stance, and he wasn't taking the stance of the zealots, right? Who were the revolutionaries who wanted to by force
the Pharisees.
knock the government down. Yeah, or the Pharisees, who are like the guys who were, all about the law. He didn't take those sides. He didn't fit
He was offending
in
all
with
of
the
them.
tribe. Exactly. So, but it didn't stop him from speaking strongly and calling stuff out. And
exactly.
And so, I think it's something about, it's like God, what is your heart for each situation? How do I love people well, and how do I call things out? God brings together those things. That's the amazing thing about his character. He brings together justice and love and grace, righteousness and peace, and he just brings these things together. And so following Jesus means learning, how do I apply that in this situation right in front of me? People go out on the streets and protest because it's a tool that a population has to deal with a problem. So, even I wonder, like in the timing of reacting, you were talking about, Ben, like, oh, should we react quickly? And I was thinking about that, and I was trying to put myself in the place of somebody who's super angry about ICE being in Minneapolis and doing all this stuff. You might argue and say, well, maybe they needed to go quickly on the streets and protest about it because it's the only tool they had to show the government that they're not cool with it. So it's just you got to think about each situation and say, God, what's your heart in this?
Yeah, no, 100% agree with you. And that I did want to bring that thread throughout this conversation, because I recognize the tone deafness of saying, like a university professor, I just need to be calm and think it through. And if it takes me 6 months to come to my conclusion, I can do that. While people would argue like, no, action needs to be taken now. There are people under threat now. I can't have that kind of professorial, like abstract, removed idea. And yet that does need to be coupled with the fact that, man, I don't know about you, but the few times whenever I react quickly, I rarely react rightly. It's just the truth. And scripture would completely back that up. Like, speed is the enemy of wisdom. And so we are legitimately caught in a position where here we are, we're in this incredibly polarized time. We live in an age where everything we look at is tailored to give me exactly what I'm thinking. We live in an age where things are made up and exaggerated undeniably. We live in a world of AI where we don't even know what the truly nefarious capabilities of AI really is. And you're telling me, in light of all of that, in the echo chamber that I live in the technology that reinforces the echo chamber that I live in, I need to make a judgment in that environment and then react quickly, adding to the hostility as a result of that. At the very least, we need to be skeptical about that, right? I mean, we can't, I agree with you, but can't we at least recognize the tension of doing that?
Yeah, and I'd add to it, because I agree with that, and I would add to it that we get this kind of false or artificial impression of reality from the way media is and how global it is, that somehow we can do something about all these things.
Sure.
And that creates a kind of an anxiety, right? It's like, it's this thing like, man, I need to say something because, everybody's saying something and I need to say something. And let's be honest, for most of us, saying whatever on social media or putting a sign up somewhere or whatever is not going to make any difference. And so it's not going to help. So I was reflecting about this, okay, because that's the impression you can sometimes get. Man, I've got to do something about Iran, and I should, say something about the ICE thing or about Venezuela, and we get all kind of caught up in this. I think that we have the responsibility to react to the things that are in front of us or that God puts on our hearts. And I think that that's one way of looking at the situation of the world today. Say, God, what are you asking me to do something about right now? And it might be something on the other side of the world. I mean, God is a missionary God. He sends us to all places around the world. He might give you a heart for Venezuela and say, Venezuela's in trouble right now. You should be praying. You should be giving. You should be doing something to help those guys. It might be that you're in Minneapolis and you see some immigrant who's running down the street and doesn't know what to do and is super lost and confused, and God gives you a heart and says, do something for that person. Step out and serve them and help them out. And it's against your political position, but you're going to do it because that's the situation that's turned up in front of you on your doorstep, and you're a follower of Jesus, and you're going to say, God, give me your heart right now. What should I do? So I feel like we need to do a bit of that in this world of confusion and too much going on, too much information.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I do really love your point about overinflating the value of our participation in the process. I know that sounds very nihilistic, but the fact is, like, you're just not as important as you think you are, and your opinion is not as needed as you think it is. And one of the things I was thinking about is, and whether this relates perfectly or not, it came to mind. I was thinking about David Wilkerson, and here he is, this humble country preacher, and he hears about the violence in New York among the gangs. And then he went on Twitter and he posted about how angry he was, and then he got Starbucks and moved on. Wasn't that an awesome testimony of what David Wilkerson did? Right? Like the fact, no.
I was like, they had Starbucks back then? Wow.
Yeah. Well, the Twitter should have been your first clue.
Yeah.
But no, what does he do? It wrecks him. It ruins him. He goes before God in prayer, and then he reroutes his entire life to go completely out of his way in a way that made no sense as this country preacher to the city of New York. And, then you get the whole cross and the switchblade, this incredible story of the way God used him to bring Jesus to that dark place. And I was like, we need more of that. We need less reactions and more sacrifice, more embodied love of Jesus in difficult places. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean there's not small ways to contribute, but it would be nice to see some more significant contributions rather than all of these social media warriors online.
I mean, in the neighborhood, when Jody and I are in Minneapolis, the neighborhood we live in, it's near a lake in the city, and so there's a lot of people with a lot of money that live on the lake. And when you walk around the lake, which is a common thing to do here, they have these multi-million-dollar homes will have a sign like "All are welcome here." There are no illegal people, humans or whatever. But we all know that if I went to the door and said, "Hi, here's my room," all are welcome here.
That would be an interesting
they
thing
would
to
call
do,
the
to call
police.
it out.
Yeah.
Because
You should try it.
It's just virtue signaling. They're not. People are generally generous when they don't have to give. It's like when it's other people's money or the government's money or it doesn't cost me anything, then I'm very generous in my political views. So I think you're right. It has to. What is it costing me? I've been kind of busy with dealing with my health stuff, so I haven't been very involved in what's going on here in Minneapolis. But I know people who are. I know people who are delivering food to those who are afraid to leave their homes. And some, like I said, some are perfectly legal, but they are Latino or something like that, and they're just afraid. And so I know people that are doing that personally, who are going to the homes of people like that and bringing them food. And also I think we need to not see the significance of prayer, what a big deal that is. So maybe as a Jesus follower, you go to where there's some of these protests where there's these, the conflict between ICE and the people there to see if they're documented, or maybe they're people that have a criminal background and need to be deported. I don't know the situation, but maybe we go there and we pray. We don't swear and at the whoever we want to swear at and throw things, but we go there and we pray for the presence of God, and we ask God to send us to people that we can talk to, whether it's one of the protesters or one of the guys from ICE, whoever, but we're there to be Jesus in that situation and also pray for God to bring about justice. I think, and then often when I start praying like that, then God gives me he starts to give me if my faith is real. There's always a practical thing that results from it normally, And I think if you're listening to this and you're going, this is way too big for me, which it is, like Ben said, we need to not have a higher view of ourselves than we should. But I think we can go and we can say, God, start praying, Lord, I don't, pray however you feel. Even if you're on the right or the left, pray and say, God, we bring justice, bring hope in the situation. And then he will, usually then the Holy Spirit will put something on your heart to do practically so that you can actually be Jesus practically as well.
Yeah.
I think,
sure.
Often God puts stuff in front of us for us to do. I think I've seen that in my own life, and that to me is a good way to respond to the feeling of like, oh, when you look at the world, like we were saying, and there's just too much, it's overwhelming, and I can't do everything. What should I do? I think God often puts stuff in front of us that we're supposed to react to, that we're supposed to do something about, like a person or a situation or something that we can contribute that has to do with what we can do and our calling. And like, there's a passage in Luke 6 where Jesus says, "Give to anyone who asks. And when things are taken away from you, don't try to take them back. Do to others as you would like them to do to you. If you only love those who love you, why should you get credit for it? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good only to those who do good to you, why should you get credit? Even sinners do that much." And, you know, so he's just talking about loving your enemies and loving people around you. But it really struck me how it starts with saying, give to anyone who asks. And that's been a principle that's kind of stayed in my mind often when I'm like, well, what can I do? What am I supposed to do? What's my part to play? It's often actually something that God puts in front of you, or somebody that asks you, or a situation you're aware of that you can do something about. And that's way better than posting lots on social media or putting a sign up, because it's something real that you can do to make a difference in that situation.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was trying to emphasize with the whole sacrifice over reaction, is that I think not only have we inflated the importance of our reaction, but also the impact of our reaction. Like, what difference am I actually making, right? And we even sort of measure the impact of what we're doing by the anger of what we're doing. You know, if I'm really upset, then I'm making a big difference. If I'm really angry on social media, then I'm making a big difference. And I've been so convicted by James 1:19 through 20 that applies just to every aspect of my life, where it says everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And here's the key part: human anger does not produce the righteousness God desires. If there's anything that should deflate the balloon of your angry reaction to a situation and the impact that has, it's this. It's submitting to the idea that I'm not God and that I need to serve and love, that his way of doing things is so radically different, and that just being riled up and angry, it's not producing God's righteousness. So if we claim that our goal is God's righteousness, that we want as followers of Jesus to see his righteousness done on this earth, my anger is not the way. And I have to humble myself to accept that. And so then what is the way? And David, you said it. It's love. It's sacrificial love. It's costly, self-sacrificial love. And that's going to be way less quick. It's going to be way less public, likely, at least in the beginning. But it's actually going to make a real difference. And I think that's what we're all kind of circling around here and saying. But that's kind of how I feel about this is, man, if I'm submitted to Jesus, I want to make a difference. And if I want to make a difference, it's going to be a lot less politically aligned, and it's going to be a lot more costly, but it's actually going to honor Jesus and make a difference, which is what I should want.
And I think big change always comes by small actions. It's always been that way. You know,
interesting.
Big change always comes. It's the principle of feed the multitudes with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And so the biggest thing the devil will do is to try to keep me from taking those small actions. But those small actions, empowered by the presence of God, can change the world. Actually, they do. And there's all kinds of examples of that. So if you're listening to this, those small actions they're small, but they're not. Yeah. We don't take ourselves too seriously, but when those small actions are Holy Spirit led, even though they are small and insignificant, that's when big things can start to happen, Yeah. And so that's what I need to not listen to, is this idea, what's the point? I can't make a big difference. Or like you were saying, Ben, about we need to just scream and swear and shout and whatever. Like, that's not going to produce anything good. That's in fact, it's going to actually do the opposite of what we're angry about, actually.
Yeah, agreed.
So that's when I need to go on a prayer walk and get out my anger and bring it to God and tell him to let me have his eyes in the situation.
Yeah, brilliant. All right. Well, anyway, not easy situation, not easy topic, and very much happening as we speak in real time. So I'd imagine even between now and when this comes out, the situation may have evolved. Man, I don't know about if you guys ever think about this, but sometimes I think about some of those January 2020 podcast we recorded about this COVID virus and how exaggerated and laughable the whole thing was.
I know I'm making big jokes about it. I know.
Like everybody. And I just have mercifully not gone back. So if you want to go on a little adventure and document all the ways we are terribly wrong, you can go ahead and do that. There's a full catalog of over 600 episodes for you to listen to. So we've laid it all out. We've been wrong on air many times. Chad is
I'm sure we could be canceled many times over.
Ben, you know, the way that I deal with stress is I make jokes. That's how I deal with stress.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made a joke, and Ben said I couldn't share it on the podcast.
So you're gonna leave
but
us
it was the
hanging.
way I was dealing with stress.
David's random story.
So the random story today is I felt that I should kind of give an update on Nigel as the random story because I know
Nice.
Many-
I miss this guy
I know.
or girl
Okay,
or
so
thing.
what does that say of the new listeners?
I don't care about the news.
You're like the guy who invites somebody over and then does a family slideshow.
So anyway, so Nigel, he's from New Zealand. He was in the U.S. He didn't have his documents.
So this is not a random story. This is literally just you making something up.
So
Went to
now he
Chad,
said
the
he got a job with a pharmacy, and he's selling something called Jardiance. Jardiance. It's for urinary tract infections, which I thought was a bit weird. But then I was reading the side effects because I don't know about you guys, because like Nigel's selling this drug, but he's talking about the side effects, and this is all real.
You're horrible.
Yeah. So Jardiance, you can look it up if you want. But here are the side
Tried it
effects.
Jardiance.
Burning
It gives you a
feeling,
weird lip.
burning feeling when urinating, pain in the lower stomach, pelvis, blood in the urine, nausea, joint pain, upper respiratory tract infections. So you have vomiting, extreme
Is that the
tiredness,
official scientific description?
dehydration,
Too much something in your blood.
dehydration, listen to this. This is real. I'm not making this up. Gangrene. You can get
Gangrene?
Yes, you could get gangrene from it.
Not gangrene, gangrene.
You could get
It's like
Gangrene.
Sangerine with a G.
serious
It's like a
allergic
canker sore, but a
reactions,
cankerous
hives,
sore.
rash, and swelling. But this is the best one. Amputations.
That's a
Jardiance
side effect, not an action that could just
Jardiance
spontaneous limb removal.
Jardiance may increase the risk of lower limb amputations like toe, foot, or leg.
Wow. It sounds
So
more
I'm
like the
thinking-
disease itself rather than the
I'm like,
stuff that
Well, it does.
medicine
It's not much
does
of a
to you.
cure.
No, I'm like, why would you even do that? And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad
It's a
that,
rat race.
that I'm not blaming Nigel. It's not his fault, or is
Right.
it? But he's just trying to make a living.
Return
But,
of the Vietnamese.
so I don't know if our listeners have had
Don't.
thoughts about all these pharmaceuticals and the kind of drugs they're selling and all the side effects. But
They have.
it was just something I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Everyone's been thinking
You
about
just
that. actually.
heard a
Nigel
random
should look for a different
pharmaceutical.
What?
You heard an advertisement for a random pharmaceutical on the radio, and then thought, I'm going to just somehow smash that together with an
What do you mean
update on
smash?
Nigel.
I didn't smash anything. No, it's just all. What are you talking about?
Poor Nigel.
So
Ben.
the question I want to know, Chad, is how many Vietnamese dongs would you pay to never hear that story again?
Many millions and millions and millions.
Well, you didn't
and
like
millions.
what was wrong with it? I
Because
thought
it was nothing. It was
What do you
like
mean?
the definition of nothing. You just made something up. You just
I didn't make
picked a
it
random.
up. Look it up, Nigel.
Well, yeah,
told
I
me.
know that's
No,
real.
it did kind of remind me what not to do.
What do you mean?
So that was good.
What's that?
Sometimes I need that reminder. Like basically, I'm not going to take the Jarjingian drug
You
or
can't
whatever
even-
it was.
You won't even be able to order it, Chad, if you can't say the name of the medicine. So you'll be all right.
I know. And how do we transition
true.
from that into the next thing? And why is it so hard to use the word transition period these days?
Yeah, you can get Giardia whenever you want to. Just
I mean, Luke,
Go
you
wash your
transitioned,
hands.
haven't you, with the whole thing?
sip
What?
it.
What are you talking about? I'm just trying to be a.
Thanks for watching Provoke and Inspire. If you enjoyed this content, could you do me a favor and hit that like button? Leave us a comment, because this ultimately is a conversation. Hit that bell thing, I think, right? And YouTube seems to be recommending another video for you to watch. Check it out. Stay involved. Also, provokeandinspirepodcast.com for everything else. That's it. Peace.